Hello and welcome to some more Coloring Through the Bible. Today we're talking about Genesis chapter 4, and it tells us a really sad story, but not what maybe you might initially think. It's a story of where Cain kills his brother Abel. And yes, it is really sad that Abel loses his life because of his righteousness. However, equally, if not more tragically, Cain loses his righteousness for the sake of his life. And that's the real tragedy. That's the real warning in Genesis chapter 4. Cain lost his relationship with God because he wanted to do things his own way and because his heart wasn't right with God. Have we ever turned our back on the Lord's decrees for the sake of our comfort? Have we ever abandoned God's will for the sake of diplomacy or keeping the peace? See, like Cain, we're tempted to feign ignorance in hopes that God is fooled. When God asked Cain, "Where's your brother?" Cain lied and said, "I have no idea. I don't keep track of my brother." But God already knew. And the same is true for us. We can lie to ourselves. We can convince ourselves that our sin isn't really a sin. We can justify it. We can blame it on other people. But in the end, God sees everything. And He's not fooled. So the story that we can take from Genesis 4, the lesson, the moral that we need to take with us today is to be completely transparent with God. Because to do anything less is like that toddler that stands in the middle of the room with their eyes closed and thinks that they're invisible. God knows everything. He knows our strengths, our weaknesses. There is nothing that we can do that God doesn't know we're doing it. And He knows our motives. The Bible tells us that God searches the heart of man. So He knows whether our motives were good and we just failed miserably, or if we tripped, or if we deliberately chose to disobey. And if we made that decision to seek our own comfort over our righteousness. An interesting point to consider lies in the fact that when Adam sinned, God cursed the ground for his sake. But when Cain sinned, God cursed Cain. And perhaps the difference can be found in the two men's responses. Adam admitted his sin, although he threw Eve under the bus completely and said, the woman that you gave me is the one that gave me the fruit. But he admitted that he messed up. But Cain never admits his guilt. And this chapter is a truly sad story and one that reminds us of Jesus' words in Luke 13, verse 3. At the end of that verse, He says, "But unless you repent, you too will all perish." Is eternity worth our momentary comfort? That's what I'd like you to keep in the back of your head today. As you read Genesis chapter 4 and you hear the punishment that God gave Cain, make it personal. Is my sin worth the punishment? Or should I just lay it all out? God knows it. And if we repent, then God will forgive us and wash us clean. So what are we waiting for? I hope that you will have a wonderful day and that you think about God's love and His amazing grace all day today. Have a truly blessed day.